Every single thing you own looked fine to you this morning. Your shoes, your desk, your phone case, the couch in your living room. You didn't think twice about any of it. Then you bought one new thing, one shirt, one lamp, one pair of sneakers. And within hours, everything around that new object started to look wrong. Not broken, not old, just insufficient. And you have no idea why it keeps happening. Here's what nobody ever told you. You didn't decide your old stuff wasn't good enough. Your brain decided for you, using a psychological mechanism that was identified over 260 years ago, exploited by every corporation on Earth, and still has no cure. The name for it sounds almost quaint. It's called the Diderot Effect. And once you understand how it works, you will never look at a purchase the same way again. In 1765, the French philosopher Denis Diderot was broke. This was strange, because Diderot was one of the most famous intellectuals in Europe. He'd spent 20 years building the Encyclopédie, a massive attempt to catalog all human knowledge into a single work. It nearly killed him, and it left him with almost nothing. He couldn't afford a dowry for his daughter's wedding. Then Catherine the Great, Empress of Russia, heard about his situation. She bought his entire personal library for 1,000 livres, and then, in a move that was either generous or strategic, let him keep the books and paid him a salary to serve as their caretaker. Overnight, Diderot had money he'd never had before, and the first thing he did was buy a scarlet dressing gown. It was beautiful, rich, elegant, lined with silk. He loved it. He wore it in his study while he wrote, and that's when the spiral began. Sitting at his old desk in that gorgeous robe, Diderot noticed his chair looked shabby, so he replaced it. Then his desk looked wrong next to the new chair. He replaced that too. Then the tapestry on the wall seemed faded compared to the robe's scarlet fabric. Then the bookshelves. Then the rug. One by one, every object in his study was replaced. Not because any of them had changed, but because his perception of them had. Diderot wrote about this in an essay he titled, "Regrets on Parting with My Old Dressing Gown." In it, he described himself as a man who had been master of his old robe, but was now a slave to his new one. He recognized what had happened. He just couldn't stop it. That essay sat in relative obscurity for over 2 centuries. Then, in 1988, anthropologist Grant McCracken at the University of Guelph in Ontario resurrected it. McCracken gave the phenomenon its modern name, the Diderot Effect, and published his analysis in a paper called Culture and Consumption. His argument was precise and uncomfortable. Humans don't buy objects. They buy coherence. Every item you own exists inside an invisible web of meaning. Your jacket talks to your shoes. Your couch talks to your rug. Your phone case talks to your laptop sticker. When every object in the web is roughly the same age, quality, and style, your brain registers the system as stable, coherent, yours. But the moment you introduce a single object that's visibly better, newer, or more refined, it breaks the coherence, and your brain cannot tolerate that break. This is the first thing to understand. It's not about greed. It's not about materialism. It's about pattern integrity, a function as old as your visual cortex. Your brain is a coherence machine. It builds systems of meaning out of the objects around you, and when one element doesn't match, it generates a low-grade signal that something is wrong. Not a thought, a feeling, an itch you can't name. And the only way to scratch it is to replace the things that no longer fit. Which of course creates a new standard, which makes other things not fit, which starts the whole cycle again. But that's only the surface explanation. There's a deeper layer, and it has almost nothing to do with objects at all. In 2012, psychologist Kathleen Vohs at the University of Minnesota published research in the Journal of Consumer Psychology showing that purchases aren't just acquisitions. They're identity declarations. When you buy a new shirt, you're not adding fabric to your closet. You're making a micro-announcement about who you are becoming. The new shirt says, "I am this now." And the old pants say, "But you were that before." The conflict isn't aesthetic. It's existential. You're not trying to match your wardrobe. You're trying to match your self-concept. And self-concept, unlike a shirt, doesn't come with a return policy. This is where it gets stranger. Because companies figured this out long before psychologists did. In 1927, General Motors president Alfred Sloan introduced what he called the annual model change. Before Sloan, a car was a car. You bought a Ford Model T and you drove it until it stopped working. There was no reason to replace it if it ran. Sloan changed that. He started releasing a new Chevrolet every single year. Same engine, same mechanics, but with a slightly different body style, a new color option, a redesigned dashboard. Not because the old car was broken, because the new car made the old car feel broken. Sloan didn't invent a product. He invented dissatisfaction, and he said so openly, calling it the organized creation of dissatisfaction. That phrase, remember it, because it is the operating system of every consumer economy on the planet. IKEA understood this. They don't just sell you a bookshelf, they sell you a room. Their showrooms are designed so that every object references every other object. The lamp matches the rug, matches the throw pillow, matches the candle holder. You walk in for a desk and leave with a vision of a life, a coherent life. And everything in your actual apartment suddenly looks like it belongs to someone you used to be. Apple understood it too. The white earbuds were never about sound quality. They were about creating a visible break between the person who had them and the person who didn't. Once you owned one Apple product, every non-Apple device in your pocket started generating that low-grade signal, that itch, that whisper. This doesn't belong here anymore. The Japanese have a word for what these companies exploit. They call it tsundoku, the act of acquiring books and letting them pile up unread. But there's a less famous concept embedded in Japanese consumer psychology, studied by economist Kenichi Ome at Waseda University in the 1990s, which describes something darker. The moment a person stops buying things for utility and starts buying them to resolve an emotional asymmetry they can't articulate. The purchase feels like a fix. It works for about 48 hours. Then the asymmetry migrates to the next object, then the next. The fix never holds. It was never designed to. And here's the part no one talks about. The Diderot Effect doesn't just operate on your possessions, it operates on your life. You get a promotion and suddenly your apartment feels too small. You move to a nicer apartment and suddenly your friend group feels too limited. You upgrade your social circle and suddenly your partner doesn't seem to fit. One upgrade destabilizes everything adjacent to it. And because modern life is designed to offer you an endless ladder of upgrades, faster phones, better clothes, newer cars, more optimized routines, you are always one purchase away from making everything else in your life look wrong. A 2021 study led by behavioral economist Thomas Gilovich at Cornell University found that people who spend money on experiences rather than objects report higher life satisfaction, not because experiences are inherently better, but because experiences don't sit next to your other possessions and create comparison. A concert ticket doesn't make your couch look bad. A vacation doesn't clash with your kitchen counter. Experiences dissolve into memory, objects persist, and persistent objects demand coherence. Diderot knew this. He wrote in that 1765 essay, one of the most haunting lines in the history of consumer philosophy, "I was absolute master of my old dressing gown, but I have become a slave to my new one." He wasn't talking about a robe. He was talking about the moment a man lets a single object redefine his standard and then watches helplessly as that new standard devours everything it touches. He described himself sitting in his newly furnished study, surrounded by beautiful things, and feeling less at home than he ever had before. Every object was perfect, and none of them were his. That's the trap. Coherence feels like completion, but it's actually a cage, because the moment you achieve it, the moment every object in your life matches, you are one purchase away from breaking it all over again. The system requires you to keep buying, not because you want more, because you can never get enough to make the itch stop. Tonight, you'll scroll past an ad for something you don't need, a jacket, a gadget, a pair of shoes that look better than the ones by your door. And for a moment, you'll feel it, that quiet pull, that sense that the thing you already own is suddenly not enough. That's not desire. That's a glitch in your pattern recognition system, identified in a Parisian study 260 years ago by a broke philosopher in a scarlet robe who watched his entire life rearrange itself around a single piece of fabric. He tried to warn you. No one listened.